Hi everyone, it's Kali Persall, editor of Institutional Investing in Infrastructure, here with Nicola Knight today, the director of low carbon at Worley Consulting, to talk about some of the challenges facing low carbon hydrogen projects. Thank you so much, Nicola, for being here. Would you like to just kick us off with a brief introduction of yourself and some information about what you do at the firm?
First of all, thank you for having me here, Callie. It's really exciting times to be talking about the challenges that we see in low carbon hydrogen. So, to start with, Nicola Knight, based here in London. By training, I'm a chemical and process engineer, and I started off life about 30 years ago at an oil refinery here in the UK as a process engineer. And since then, I've always worked in that consulting space, looking at sustainable energy efficiency, which is the starting point for any energy transition journey, regardless of the sector that you work in. And so we set up the team in Worley Consulting about 5 years ago to help industrial clients to manage the energy transition, because for every client it's a different journey and they have different needs, whether it's policy, regulations, understanding the market, understanding the technology, and we support them to manage their energy transition so that they stay in business and make the right decisions.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. You wrote an article for the June issue of my publication, I3, discussing some of the challenges facing early stage low carbon hydrogen projects. Can you just walk me through why these projects are falling short? What do you see as the biggest obstacles?
If you look at the headlines of low carbon hydrogen projects being cancelled or postponed or delayed, I think cost is always cited as one of the reasons. But I think you need to look behind just the headline of the cost and understand the decisions and the activities that have happened previously to end up with the costs being too high. Because for me, it's all about developing that robust business case right at the very beginning so that you take forward the project that is most likely to succeed and pass FID and go into construction and operation. And I think where we've seen projects fail because of costs, I think maybe the business case, the very initial ideas weren't as robust and had been evaluated as much as they should have done. When we help clients understand that business case, there's sort of three key areas that we look at. First one is off-taker. Who are you making this low carbon hydrogen for? What are they going to use it? Why do they want low carbon hydrogen? What are they going to do with it? What's the market that they're going to serve? And then the scale, what scale plant are you going to build? Because then that dictates the infrastructure that you need to go along with it. So if we're talking green hydrogen, then we need to have the right amount of renewable power available, the access and the availability of the grid to move the electricity around. We need the water resources available for the electrolysis. And then if we're talking blue hydrogen, well, then we need the carbon capture and storage facilities and transportation facilities to make that work. So scale is the next thing that's really important in the business case. And then finally, it's all about the location. Where is your hydrogen being produced compared to where it's being consumed? What market is that in? What region of the world is that in? And then what funding and policy support there is for that region. So I think those three key areas of off-taker, scale, and location are such key factors for that business case. And if you can get that right, then you've got a much better chance of then reaching FID, your financial decision to go forward, moving into construction and then on to operation.
No, absolutely. That's extremely interesting. Do you see the necessary regulation and incentives in place to support market viability for low carbon hydrogen? And if not, what changes might need to take place to unlock more opportunities?
That regulation and incentives is really important, because if you want people to stop doing what they're doing, change their behavior, move away from fossil fuels, then we need the regulation and incentive to support that. And actually, low carbon hydrogen is quite fortunate. There's lots of different targets, lots of different angles that can be used to support that low carbon hydrogen economy. So whether it's decarbonisation targets that are set at a country level, whether it's maybe the Refuel EU and the SAF mandates, so the mandates for the sustainable aviation fuel, and then obviously there's the IMO, that International Maritime Organization, and the announcement that they've made about reducing emissions for the maritime fuel, which will obviously promote methanol and ammonia. And all of these have a role to play in low carbon hydrogen. So I think there's a lot of regulation and incentives out there to support hydrogen. But in terms of what I would change, I think for me, it's all about standardization, consistency. If you're a producer of a low carbon product in the Middle East and you want to export to Europe, well, there's a difference in the carbon intensity of that final product as to whether you're going to the Europe or to the UK. And it's those sort of complexities and inconsistencies that make it much harder for the developer to really, make sure that they're producing the right quality product to meet the right specifications for the end user. So I think, yeah, the one thing if I could change anything, it would really be that consistency and global standards and a slight simplification of those standards. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Thank you for kind of diving into that a little bit more detail. So, technological innovation, I understand, is a big part of low carbon hydrogen industry. What advice would you give to investors about how to assess the potential commercial viability about a particular technological solution?
Yeah, and I think when you think about the low carbon hydrogen supply chain, it's really complex and there's lots of different parts to it. And I think the key mistake that people make is to maybe not consider the full supply chain, but to maybe just consider an individual portion. And yes, there might have been a fantastic development in electrolyzers that's made them really efficient. So that's great. But if it's being placed in the wrong project, in the wrong location, then it doesn't matter. So I think really for me, with the investors, the key thing is to understand the project in its entirety, make sure that those key aspects that I mentioned previously, the off-taker is locked in, make sure that the scale is and the infrastructure to support that scale and that the location is secure. I think they're the important things to consider, and then that innovation fits into one of those buckets, and you just can't consider things in isolation. It's got to be the whole project.
So, I'm just curious, looking ahead, what is your sort of outlook for the industry moving forward?
I guess before I say anything, I should say I am a positive person. I'm definitely a glass is half full rather than half empty. And I think, there have been some headlines of project cancellations and delays, but I think beneath those headlines, there's a lot of projects that are just quietly going on their way and making their way through to operation. And I think the projects that do make their way through a smaller scale. I think if you think back to the industry, 2, 3 years ago, people were talking gigawatt scale, and I think we'll get there, but it's not going to happen this year or next year or even probably in the next 5 years. So I think the projects that we can see on the ground, everyone will get more confident in them. The supply chains will be better understood, be more established, and then I think the scale will grow. So from where I sit, from the projects that I see progressing and the conversations that I have with clients globally, smaller scale, they've got a confirmed off-taker. The production is co-located with the end use to minimize the infrastructure requirements for transporting the hydrogen around. And I think there's a lot more focus on making sure that that off-taker is really tied in. And I think those projects will go ahead. And then as everyone gets more confident, that scale will increase in, the next sort of 5 to 10 years.